Hi and welcome. You're listening to the LM Report. I'm your host, Lima, and this is episode 8, coming to you on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. Today's episode, titled Message Sent, Trump Sets the Stage for Economic Reform, Everything is About to Change, dives into a whirlwind of economic developments shaking up the U.S. and the world. We're talking trade wars heating up with China, a push for energy independence, a manufacturing revival, and subtle hints at a seismic shift in how our financial system operates. This isn't just news, it's a roadmap to where we're headed. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's unpack the latest economic stories with the depth and clarity you deserve. Economic landscape setting the stage. Let's start with the big picture. The U.S. economy has been on a wild ride. Inflation soared to 9.1% in June 2022 under President Biden, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, driven by supply chain chaos and energy shocks. Gas hit $5 a gallon in some states, per AAA records. It's since cooled to 5.2% as of March 2025, but prices for essentials like groceries up 25% since 2020 per USDA, and rent up 20% per census data still sting. The national debt? A staggering $36.5 trillion, climbing $2 trillion yearly per Treasury Department figures, a burden that sparked heated debate. Trump's administration argues this mess traces back to Biden-era policies. They point to GDP shrinking for 2 quarters in 2022, down 1.6% and 0.6% per Bureau of Economic Analysis, a classic recession signal. The White House then, led by Janet Yellen, redefined it, claiming jobs growth, 4.5 million added per BLS, offset the slump. Critics called it spin, Trump's team calls it a cover-up. Now they're promising to pull us out of what they dub Biden's recession with a bold mix of trade, energy, and deregulation. Let's explore how they're doing it and what it means for you. Trade wars and tariffs, a global chess game. The headline grabber this week is Trump's trade offensive, and it's escalating fast. On April 8, 2025, he jacked up tariffs on Chinese goods to 125%, effective immediately, per a Truth Social post. That's up from 104% just days ago, a response to China's retaliatory hike from 34% to 84% on U.S. exports, announced by their Commerce Ministry on April 7. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent fired a warning shot. Today, China's move will boomerang. Why? The numbers tell the story. U.S. exports to China totaled $143.5 billion in 2024, while China shipped $438.9 billion our way, per Census Bureau data. That's a $295.4 billion trade deficit, giving America serious leverage. Trump's not swinging blindly. On April 8, he unveiled a strategic pivot, a 90-day tariff pause for 75 countries, including Japan, South Korea, India, and Vietnam, slashing rates to 10% during negotiations. He wrote, more than 75 countries have called to discuss trade barriers, tariffs, and currency issues. I've authorized a pause and a 10% reciprocal tariff effective immediately. This carrot-and-stick approach rewards cooperation while pressuring outliers like China, Canada, and the EU, who face steeper levies. 125% for China now, with EU tariffs set to rise from 10% to 25% between April 15th and December, per their Trade Council. Markets loved it. The Dow jumped 1.2% on April 8th, hitting 43,500 per Bloomberg, while gold climbed to $2,650 per ounce per Kitco, a sign investors see stability, not collapse. Trump's goal? Balanced trade, not punishment. He's nudging nations to the table, leveraging America's market power, $20 trillion in annual consumption per World Bank estimates, to rewrite decades of imbalance. Critics like J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon predict a recession. IMF forecasts 1.8% GDP growth for 2025, but Trump's camp insists they're fixing a system that's bled jobs since NAFTA's 1994 debut, with 90,000 factories lost, per his oft-cited stat. Take China's case. Their economy's wobbling, GDP growth slowed to 4.5% in 2024, per World Bank, down from 8% a decade ago. The yuan slid 5% since January per XE.com, and Zero Hedge warns of a 20 to 40% devaluation if Trump pushes tariffs to 400% as Kevin O'Leary floats. Trump's giving them time to mull it over per his post, but the message is clear: negotiate or hurt. Meanwhile, allies like India could gain. Exports to the U.S. rose 15% since 2023 per Commerce Department data, shifting global trade flows. Energy independence, powering the future. Energy's the next piece. Oil prices dipped to $57 per barrel today, April 9th, the lowest since 2021 per EIA data, down from $80 in January 2025. OPEC's pumping 38 million barrels daily per their April report, flooding markets. But Trump's doubling down domestically. An April 8th executive order lifts Biden-era coal plant curbs shutting 20% of capacity since 2021 per EIA and fast-tracks oil permits targeting 12 million barrels daily by 2027, up from 9 million now per Energy Department goals. He predicts oil at $20 per barrel, slashing gas from $2.50 to $1.75 or lower nationwide. Picture this: filling a 15-gallon tank at $1.75 saves $22 per trip versus $3.30, $500 yearly for the average driver per AAA's 12,000-mile estimate. That's real money. Beyond pumps, cheap energy cuts manufacturing costs, steel production drops 10% per ton per industry studies, and boosts transport, with trucking firms saving $1,000 per rig monthly. Per American Trucking Association models. Trump's tying this to trade. Lower costs offset tariff hikes. Electronics might rise 5% per Consumer Technology Association, but energy savings could balance it. Historical parallel? The 1970s oil crisis saw prices quadruple after OPEC's embargo per EIA archives. Trump's flipping that script, aiming for abundance. Manufacturing revival, jobs and economic ripples. Now let's talk jobs. Trump's luring companies back with a siren call. On Truth Social, he posted, "This is a great time to move your company to the U.S. like Apple and others in record numbers. Zero tariffs, fast energy hookups, no environmental delays, do it now." Deregulation's key, permitting times drop from 18 months to 90 days per Commerce Department plans, slashing costs by 30% per McKinsey estimates. Apple's Texas expansion since 2023 added 5,000 jobs per their SEC filings. Tesla's eyeing Nevada for a new plant per Reuters, potentially 3,000 more. This could ignite a boom. Building factories means construction 50,000 workers nationwide over 5 years per BLS projections for similar projects. Operating them adds manufacturing roles 200,000 by 2030 per National Association of Manufacturers models. Then come truckers, 20,000 jobs per ATA, warehouse staff and support, think 10,000 more in logistics per census employment trends. It's a cascade, reversing outsourcing's toll. Those 90,000 lost factories left 5 million jobs gone since 1994 per Economic Policy Institute. Take Ohio. A shuttered GM plant in Lordstown closed 2019, cost 1,600 jobs per local reports. Trump's pitch could revive such sites. Cheap energy and no tariffs make it viable. Critics warn of short-term pain. Supply chain shifts might spike costs 3 to 5% per Deloitte, but the long game's jobs and self-reliance. Federal Reserve, a subtle revolution. Here's the wild card: the Federal Reserve. Trump's February 18th executive order ensuring accountability for all agencies mandates oversight of regulatory bodies but carves out the Fed's monetary policy arm. It states this order shall not apply to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System or the Federal Open Market Committee in its conduct of monetary policy. Odd, right? Trump's bashed the Fed before, calling it more dangerous than China in 2019, and this exemption raises eyebrows. Some see a feint. Energy independence, 12 million barrels daily by 2027, trade surpluses, potentially $100 billion yearly per trade partnership estimates, and job growth, 250,000 plus from manufacturing. Could cut reliance on Fed borrowing. $2 trillion deficits, lean on its $8 trillion bond pile since 2008 per Fed data. Bessent's April 9th Bitcoin magazine comment fuels speculation. We'll review blockchain, stablecoins, and new payment systems. A shift from SWIFT Fed-tied to a treasury-backed digital dollar or crypto could marginalize central bankers. History offers clues. Nixon's 1971 gold standard exit gold hit $200 by 1974 per Kitco archives followed petrodollar deals with Saudi Arabia per State Department records. Inflation spiked to 11% in 1974 per BLS but stabilized by 1980. Trump's laying parallel tracks, energy, trade, jobs to brace for a Fed pivot. He's not saying it outright wide at the hand, but the pieces align. Economic impact, navigating the transition. Shifting systems brings turbulence. China's 84% tariff hits you. Farmers' soybean exports, $14 billion in 2024, face $2 billion losses per USDA. The EU's 10 to 25% levies, phased through December, add pressure auto parts exports, $5 billion annually per commerce, could dip 10% per industry forecasts. Trump's playbook? Use tariff revenue $80 billion in 2018 per CBO to subsidize farmers as he did with $12 billion then. Besant hints at $20 billion this round, per CNBC. Long-term wealth flows back. China's yuan down 5% since January risks a 20 to 40% drop. If tariffs hit 400% per zero hedge, a $2 to $3 trillion stimulus there would balloon their $18 trillion debt per IMF. The U.S., with $20 trillion in consumption power, stands to reclaim jobs, think 500,000 total by 2030 per Oxford Economics, and capital lost since the 1990s, when China's WTO entry siphoned $2 trillion in manufacturing per EPI. Political pushback and public pulse. Resistance is brewing. On April 8th, Chuck Schumer proposed curbing Trump's tariff powers, calling them overboard, versus Biden's lighter touch. The White House fires back. Democrats like Pelosi decried China's $35 billion surplus in 1996 per congressional records, yet balk now. Trump's April 9th Truth Post demands action. I met with the Speaker and conservative members. We're pushing $1 trillion in spending cuts and tax relief. Our country will boom. A tax cut bill targeting $150,000 earners could save families $2,000 yearly per tax foundation models. Public sentiment? A March 2025 Gallup poll shows 62% back Trump's trade stance, up from 58% in 2024, driven by job hopes. Unemployment's 4.1% per BLS, but manufacturing's a bright spot. His President for the Workers line, from an April 8th speech, I stand for Main Street, not Wall Street, hits home, with blue-collar voters, per exit polls, showing 55% support in Rust Belt states. The vision. A people's economy unfolds. This isn't piecemeal, it's a vision. Trump's weaving tariffs, energy, deregulation, and tax cuts into a tapestry of self-reliance, less bound to global banks. The Fed's $8 trillion expansion since 2008 fueled debt. Trump's eyeing a leaner future. Imagine oil at $20, factories humming, taxes slashed, buying power could rise 15% per Heritage Foundation projections, echoing the 1950s boom, 3.5% annual growth per BEA. Critics fear a 1970s-style crash. GDP fell 3.2% in 1974, but Trump's banking on public trust built step by step. We're at a turning point. Trade wars, energy shifts, and a potential Fed reckoning signal big changes. It's messy, it's bold, but it's deliberate. The LM report will keep you in the loop, dissecting these moves with facts and insight. Thanks for joining me today. Be well, be safe, and stay curious. If this episode lit up your understanding, please subscribe to the LM report. We're building a community to tackle these times together. This is Lima signing off until tomorrow.